Elena's stolen diplomatic courier barely cleared the Council station's defense grid as automated systems registered the unauthorized departure. Alarms blared across the station, but she was already punching in the coordinates for the nearest human outpost. Her diplomatic codes would only mask her signature for a few hours at most. Ambassador Sharma to any human vessels, she broadcast on the emergency channel, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. The Council has attacked New Eden and Avalon. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. Only static answered her. The Council would be jamming communications. She clutched Delegate Xorthol's data crystal, its surface warm against her palm. The reptilian delegate had risked everything to warn humanity. Elena wondered how many others like him existed within the Council, those who recognized the pattern of systematic extinction, but remained silent out of fear. The courier's navigation system chimed, indicating she'd reached a safe distance for a hyperspace jump. As the stars elongated around her, Elena finally allowed herself a moment to process what she'd witnessed. The holographic images of New Eden's cities vaporizing replayed in her mind. 3 million colonists, families, children, all gone in an instant of political calculation. She'd spent 3 years advocating for humanity's peaceful integration, assuring Earth's leaders that the Council represented stability and progress. How completely they had all been deceived. The courier emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Ta-Ceti system, home to the research outpost Prometheus. As she approached, Elena saw the station's lights were dark. Her scanners detected debris and radiation consistent with weapons fire. "They're moving faster than I thought," she whispered. The Council wasn't just targeting major colonies. They were systematically erasing human presence throughout the galaxy. Earth wouldn't know what had happened until it was too late. Elena altered course for the Kuiper belt of the Sol system, the aging mining stations there operated on independent communications networks, her best chance to warn Earth before the Council's fleet arrived. She inserted Xorthol's data crystal into the courier's reader. Classified Council protocols appeared on her screen, revealing the full extent of Resolution 37B. The document calculated humanity's technological acceleration rate and predicted that within 20 years, humans would surpass the oldest Council species in military capability. The resolution authorized preemptive containment of Earth and all colonies with a projected human casualty rate of 99.7%. The final page contained something unexpected: a dissenting opinion from a minority coalition of Council members, including Xorthol's species. They argued that humanity's adaptability made them valuable potential allies rather than threats. They had been overruled. Elena's fingers flew across the communications array, compressing the data and preparing it for broadcast. She included her own eyewitness testimony and authentication codes that would prove to Earth's leaders that this threat was real. As she worked, the courier's sensors detected 3 Council vessels emerging from hyperspace behind her. Peacekeepers, they called themselves. The irony would have been laughable if millions weren't already dead. "This is Ambassador Elena Sharma." She began recording, her voice finding new strength. "What I'm about to tell you will sound impossible, but you must listen. The Galactic Council has betrayed us. New Eden and Avalon have been destroyed. Earth is next." She took a deep breath and continued. "We believed we were joining a community of stars. Instead, we've discovered that humanity was never meant to survive. But they've miscalculated. They don't understand what happens when humans have nothing left to lose." The Council vessels were closing in. Elena finished her transmission, broadcasting it toward every human outpost and relay station in range. As the first warning shots flashed past her viewport, she set a new course, directly toward Earth. They wanted to silence humanity. She would make sure her people's voice was the last thing they ever heard. Marcus watched as his medical team treated the survivors for radiation exposure and dehydration. Most were children, their small frames made even smaller by days without proper nutrition. The mining complex's emergency rations had been meant for adults, not growing bodies. A girl approached him, her face smudged with dust and tears. Lily Wong, 8 years old, orphaned in an instant when New Avalon City became atomized glass. She stood with unnerving stillness. "Captain Chin," she said, her voice steady despite everything. "Ms. Peterson says you're taking us to Earth." Marcus knelt to meet her eyes. "That's the plan, Lily. We're going to get you somewhere safe." "There isn't anywhere safe anymore." She didn't say it as a question. "I heard the teachers talking. The council is going to attack Earth too." Marcus hesitated. Children deserved comfort, not harsh truths. But the look in Lily's eyes told him she'd already left childhood behind the moment the sky burned. "We don't know that for certain," he said carefully, "but we're preparing as if they might." She nodded, processing this with disturbing adult calculation. "Then we should help. Even kids." Before Marcus could respond, his tactical officer, Lieutenant Rivera, interrupted. "Captain, we've got something you need to hear." In the Perseverance's communications bay, Ambassador Sharma's distress signal played on repeat. The transmission quality was poor, degraded by distance and council jamming attempts, but the message was unmistakable. Earth had perhaps days before council peacekeeping vessels arrived. "What's our status?" Marcus asked, scanning the room. His crew looked back at him, exhaustion etched into their faces. "Life support at 160% capacity with the survivors aboard," reported his XO, Commander Takeda. "We've converted cargo bays to temporary quarters. Fuel reserves at 82%, enough to reach Earth if we push it. And our armaments." A heavy silence fell across the bridge. "Sir," Rivera finally spoke, "we're a supply vessel. We have 2-point defense turrets for meteoroid deflection. Nothing that would even scratch a council peacekeeping ship." Marcus nodded grimly. "What about the mining equipment?" Chief Engineer Patel looked up from her console, eyes widening as she caught his meaning. "The plasma drills could be repurposed, not as weapons exactly, but the energy signature might register as threatening on their sensors. And the mineral separation explosives. They're designed for precision fragmentation, but if we modify them—" "Do it," Marcus ordered. "Use whatever you need. And download everything you can from Avalon's database before we leave. Technical specs, research data, agricultural genomics. Anything that might help Earth prepare." As his crew scrambled to their tasks, Marcus returned to the refugee bay. The survivors had organized themselves with remarkable efficiency. Adults were inventorying supplies, while teenagers supervised the younger children. Even in catastrophe, human resourcefulness emerged. In one corner, Lily Wong was leading a group of children in creating a memorial wall. Handwritten names of those they'd lost, accompanied by simple drawings. Marcus felt his throat tighten. These children had every right to collapse into despair, yet here they were, honoring their dead while helping the living. "Captain," a voice called. Dr. Sarah Cohen, one of the mining colony's medical researchers, approached with a data tablet. "Before the attack, we were working on adaptive radiation treatments using the planet's native fungal compounds. The research was nearly complete." She handed him the tablet. "This could help survivors on other colonies if there are any." Marcus accepted it with reverence. "There will be, Doctor. Humanity isn't finished yet." The ship's intercom crackled to life with Commander Takeda's voice. "Captain, we've detected another vessel approaching. It's broadcasting on encrypted Earth Defense Force channels." Hope flared in Marcus's chest. They weren't alone after all. "Set to intercept," he ordered, "and prepare our survivors for transfer if it's friendly." As the Perseverance changed course, Marcus gazed at the children's memorial wall. Next to her parents' names, Lily had written in unsteady letters, "We will remember. We will rebuild." In that moment, Marcus understood. The council hadn't just committed genocide. They had created their own worst enemy, a humanity with nothing to lose and everything to avenge. Dr. Olivia Ndlovu moved through the labyrinthine corridors of Crucible with practiced efficiency. The asteroid base had once been a forgotten mining operation on humanity's star charts. Now it housed over 300 scientists, engineers, and military personnel, the nucleus of humanity's resistance. She entered the central laboratory where her team worked around the clock. Holographic displays showed real-time council communications intercepted by their network of infiltrators. The aliens believed their quantum encryption unbreakable, not realizing that humans had already developed workarounds. Dr. Ndlovu called Sanjay Mehta, her chief cryptography expert. We've decoded the council's next target list. Olivia studied the projected map, her expression hardening. The council was being methodical, eliminating human outposts in order of their technological advancement. Mars colony would be next. How long? She asked. 48 hours until their fleet arrives, Sanjay replied. Not enough time for a full evacuation. Olivia nodded grimly. Then we accelerate the Phantom Protocol. The laboratory fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. They would sacrifice the physical infrastructure of Mars to preserve its people and knowledge. Alert our operatives on Mars, she instructed. Begin removing all data cores and essential personnel via the underground network. Then prepare the colony for totaling. Totaling was their euphemism for the scorched earth strategy, leaving nothing of value for the Council to analyze. Better to destroy human advances themselves than allow the enemy to study and counter them. As her team mobilized, Olivia retreated to her private laboratory. Here, surrounded by specimens collected from a dozen Council worlds, she conducted her most sensitive research. The bioweapons program was known to only 5 people in the entire resistance. She had never imagined herself becoming a creator of such things. Before the massacre, she had taken an oath to heal, not harm. But the Council had forced this evolution upon her, upon all humanity. The communication panel on her desk illuminated. A Council transmission, originating from Earth itself. She accepted it, and the holographic form of her most valuable asset appeared. Vril Na, a mid-level Council administrator assigned to the occupation force. The situation deteriorates. The alien reported without preamble, its translucent appendages flickering with agitation. Council forces are implementing Phase 2 on Earth. They are collecting human genetic samples for cataloging before sterilization. Olivia's blood ran cold. The Council wasn't just trying to eliminate humans as a threat. They were preserving specimens, as if humanity were nothing more than an interesting biological footnote. How much time? She asked. 3 standard Council cycles before the processing centers are fully operational, Vrilne answered. I risk much by contacting you. My species remembers what it means to be processed. There it was, the reason Vrilne had turned traitor. The Council had done this before, to countless species. The Vril had survived only by accepting subjugation centuries ago. Your risk is acknowledged and honored, Olivia said formally. What can you tell me about the security protocols at the processing centers? As Vrilna transmitted the schematics, Olivia began formulating a plan. The Council's processing centers would become their greatest vulnerability. After the transmission ended, she summoned her operational team. Tamir Reeves, former Special Forces, Julia Chen, Engineering Savant, Marco Santos, Infiltration Specialist, and Quan Jin, Quantum Communications Expert. The Council believes they're cataloging humanity before our extinction, she told them, projecting Vrilna's intelligence. Instead, they're bringing our resistance right into their strongholds. Julia studied the processing center schematics. These facilities will draw thousands of humans daily. Perfect cover for our agents. More than cover, Olivia replied. The Council is creating a network for us by gathering humans from different regions. Each person processed becomes a potential recruit. Tamir nodded in understanding. They're trying to document our extinction. And instead, they're connecting our resistance cells. Olivia finished. The Ghost Network will spread through their very documentation process. As her team began planning the infiltration, Olivia returned to her specimens. The Council thought humanity was just another species to catalog and eliminate. They failed to understand a fundamental truth. Humans had evolved as prey before becoming predators. When cornered, that ancient instinct reemerged. The Council had started this war believing they were the hunters. They would learn, far too late, that they had become the hunted. Jackson Wei moved through the vast archives of the Axis Prime facility with practiced nonchalance. 3 years of meticulous preparation had earned him access to the lowest levels of the Council's repository. His false identity as Curator Naltev, a Xenovation art collector specializing in extinct species artifacts, had withstood every security protocol. The central archive chamber hummed with energy as data crystals stored the collective history of thousands of worlds. Jackson approached a terminal. Inserting the access key he painstakingly replicated from scans taken by a compromised maintenance drone. Species classification records, pre-unification era, he requested in flawless high xenovation. The system obliged, projecting holographic indexes. Jackson navigated to the restricted section, marked Containment Operations, Historical. His breath caught as file after file appeared, each representing a species that had faced Council management. The Drell, whose faster-than-light technology had advanced too quickly. The Sovan, whose neural interface systems had worried Council elders. The Meridians, whose adaptive immune systems had been deemed unpredictably mutable. Species after species, all sharing one common trait: rapid adaptation and innovation. Jackson downloaded everything. The specialized biotech implanted beneath his skin, storing petabytes of data without detection. This wasn't just intelligence gathering. It was recovering the erased histories of countless civilizations. A file marked Living Specimens caught his attention. What he found there sickened him. The Council hadn't merely documented extinction. They had preserved exemplars of each species. Living beings kept in stasis, exhibited in private collections for high-ranking Council members. He was so absorbed in the horror that he almost missed the slight change in the room's ambient sound. Security protocols shifting without warning. Something had triggered an alert. Jackson calmly finished his download and began walking toward the exit, maintaining the unhurried pace of a curator with rightful access. The massive doors sealed before he reached them. Curator Naltev, a disembodied voice announced, "Please remain in place for identity verification." Jackson assessed his options. The ventilation system was too small. The secondary exits would be sealed as well. He reached for the emergency escape plan, a capsule of engineered microbes that would trigger a containment alarm, forcing an evacuation. Before he could act, a panel in the floor slid open silently beside him. A slender, scaled hand emerged, beckoning. Jackson hesitated only briefly before dropping into the opening. He found himself in a maintenance tunnel, face to face with a being he recognized from archive images, a Calendri, a species reportedly exterminated 2 centuries ago. The Council's security algorithms detected anomalies in your neural patterns, the Calendri whispered, her scales shifting color to match the tunnel walls. You study our kinds with too much empathy, human. Jackson's hand moved toward his concealed weapon. Peace, she hissed. I am Misa of the Discarded. We have watched you since you infiltrated this facility. Your mission aligns with ours. The Discarded, Jackson questioned as they crawled through the narrow passage. Those who refused extinction, Misa explained. Survivors of 18 species, hidden in the shadows of Council space. We maintain these tunnels, these hidden paths between their structures. We have waited for allies with the strength to challenge the Council openly. They emerged in a sealed chamber filled with antiquated technology. A dozen beings turned to face Jackson, each from a different species, each supposedly extinct. An elderly being with crystalline appendages approached. I am Cynic of the Vor. We were the 7th species scheduled for containment. Some of us escaped. Some always escape. How many of you are there? Jackson asked, still processing this revelation. Not enough to challenge the Council alone, Cynic replied, but perhaps with humanity's resistance. Jackson connected to the quantum entanglement communicator Dr. Ndlovu had implanted in his cerebral cortex. Crucible, this is Archivist. Priority Alpha transmission. He looked around at the gathered survivors, living ghosts of the Council's atrocities. The game has changed, he reported. We're not alone in this fight. Requesting extraction for myself and 17 representatives of supposedly extinct species. There was a long pause before Olivia's voice responded. Acknowledged, Archivist. Prepare for extraction in 6 hours. And Jackson, well done. As the discarded began gathering their essential possessions, Jackson realized the Council's greatest mistake. They had been so focused on eliminating potential threats that they had created their own worst nightmare. A coalition of the condemned, with nothing to lose and centuries of grievance to fuel their resistance. And humanity would unite them all. Lieutenant Commander Sofia Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the Amaranth, watching as her unlikely battle group approached Verix 9 shipyard. The massive structure loomed against the backdrop of a blue giant star, construction arms extending like a metallic spider ready to snare unwary prey. Status report, she ordered, her voice betraying none of the anxiety coursing through her. All vessels in position, reported her tactical officer. The Bellerophon and Odysseus are maintaining their cover as damaged transports. The Hesperides has its recreation deck conversion complete, all shuttles armed and ready. The mining haulers are on standby with phase shift generators at optimal charge. Sophia nodded. Her fleet was a patchwork of converted civilian vessels, the remnants of humanity's once proud exploration initiative, now transformed into instruments of war. Begin transmission of the distress sequence, she ordered. The shipyard's response was immediate. A squadron of defensive drones deployed, surrounding the approaching damaged vessels. Behind them, Sophia detected 5 massive Leviathan-class dreadnoughts in their final construction phases, planet killers being prepared for humanity's extinction. Sophia checked the countdown on her neural link. 3 minutes until the phase shift technology could be deployed. Dr. Ndlovu's team had reverse-engineered it from salvaged Council technology, but it was untested in combat conditions. Commander, her communications officer called. The shipyard is demanding our registration codes. Transmit the compromised codes, Sophia instructed. Make it look like radiation damage has corrupted parts of the sequence. On her tactical display, she watched as the defensive grid recalibrated, scanners focusing on their approach vectors, just as planned. 30 seconds to phase shift, announced her chief engineer. All vessels report ready. Sophia activated the ship-wide communication. All hands, prepare for combat operations. Remember, we evacuate civilian personnel before setting charges. No exceptions. She thought of her family on Earth, now living under Council occupation, of the billions already lost. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about proving that humanity wouldn't be erased from the galaxy without a fight. Initiating phase shift in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The universe blinked around them. For a fraction of a second, Sophia felt her body exist everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. Then reality reasserted itself, and the Amaranth materialized inside the shipyard's defensive perimeter. Deployment phase initiated. She called over the momentary disorientation. Launch all boarding parties. Across her makeshift fleet, assault shuttles launched toward predetermined targets. The Hesperides' converted recreation deck emptied as dozens of small craft streaked toward the shipyard's central control hub. The mining haulers positioned themselves alongside the incomplete Leviathan dreadnoughts, magnetic grapples attaching to their hulls. The shipyard's defenses responded in confusion, weapons targeting empty space where human ships had been seconds before. By the time they recalibrated, Sophia's forces were already inside. Engineering teams, you have 15 minutes. She transmitted to the boarding parties. Sabotage protocols as instructed. Security teams, begin civilian evacuation immediately. On her tactical display, Sophia watched as the operation unfolded with precision. The Council's automated defense systems were being turned against them, their own construction robots reprogrammed to tear apart the very ships they had been building. "Commander," her security chief reported, "resistance is minimal. Most of the shipyard personnel are contractors from non-council species. They're cooperating with the evacuation." Sophia wasn't surprised. The council's arrogance extended to their treatment of their own workers. Why would these beings fight for masters who saw them as disposable? 8 minutes until charges are set, reported her engineering team. All 5 Leviathans have been compromised at structural weak points. Victory was within grasp when alarms blared across the bridge. "Council warship dropping out of hyperspace," shouted her tactical officer. "Heavy cruiser class. They must have been alerted." Sophia calculated quickly. Her fleet couldn't hope to engage a council warship directly, but they had come too far to abandon the mission now. "Continue the operation," she ordered. "Prepare all vessels for emergency phase shift once charges are set." She opened a channel to the approaching council vessel. "Time to try something unexpected." "Attention council warship," she transmitted in perfect high council formal language. "This facility has been claimed by the human resistance. Your construction facilities are lost. Your dreadnoughts are sabotaged beyond repair. You have 7 minutes to withdraw before we detonate charges throughout the facility." There was a long pause before the council commander responded, his translator rendering his disbelief. "You are surrounded, human. Surrender now and your execution will be painless." Sophia smiled grimly. "Examine your sensor readings more carefully. All civilian personnel have been evacuated. We have no hostages to offer, no bargaining position to improve. We came here to destroy this facility, and we will succeed regardless of your arrival. The only variable is whether you die with it." Another pause. Sophia could almost see the council commander reassessing the situation. 3 minutes until detonation, called her engineer. The council warship began to withdraw. "All teams, complete your objectives and return to ships immediately," Sophia ordered. "Prepare for emergency phase shift on my mark." As her fleet reassembled and the last charges were set, Sophia recorded a final message to leave in the shipyard's communication system. "This is Commander Sofia Rodriguez of the Human Resistance. Today we destroyed 20 years of your shipbuilding capacity. Tomorrow we strike elsewhere. There will be no warning, no mercy, just as you showed none to our colonies. You started this war. We will end it." The charges detonated as her fleet phase shifted to safety, the brilliant explosion temporarily outshining the nearby blue giant. In 3 hours of precision warfare, humanity had just changed the course of the conflict. And the Council had just learned to fear. The ancient caverns of Nexus Prime stretched for kilometers beneath the planet's irradiated surface. Once home to a thriving civilization, the world had been contained by the Council 4 centuries earlier. Yet deep underground, life persisted in defiance of extinction. Elena Sharma stood before representatives of 17 supposedly extinct species, her human frame seemingly fragile compared to the crystalline Vor or the towering Urluf. Yet it was to her that they looked, the voice of Earth. They called her now. "We have summoned you here," rumbled Senek, the Vor elder whose crystalline appendages refracted the low light into rainbow patterns, "because your Jackson way speaks of alliance. Our species have survived alone for centuries," added Cirrus of the Myclith, the gaseous being's form rippling with skepticism. "Why should we risk our secrecy for humans, newcomers to the Council's cruelty?" Elena understood their hesitation. For generations, these beings had hidden, preserving the embers of their civilizations while the galaxy believed them extinct. "I don't ask you to fight our war," Elena responded, her translator rendering her words in the unique frequencies each species could comprehend. "I ask you to fight your own. The war you've been waging in shadow for centuries. The difference is that humanity refuses to hide." Murmurs rippled through the gathering. A Tracerian hive mind representative stepped forward, its compound body shifting as its component organisms realigned. "Your resistance has shown unexpected effectiveness," the Tracerian acknowledged, its collected voice harmonizing from multiple throats. The Varix 9 operation particularly impressed us, but humans lack experience in long-term survival against the Council. Your fury burns bright, but will extinguish quickly. Helena turned as Lily Wong, now her personal aide, approached with a data projector. At 12, the girl who had survived Avalon's mines had become a symbol of humanity's future and its determination. You've all survived longer than us, Lily acknowledged, activating the projector. You've all suffered more than us, but we offer something you've lost: hope. The hologram displayed hidden human settlements throughout Council space, each housing not only human refugees, but members of other species who had made contact with the Resistance. Alone, we survive in shadows, Elena continued. Together, we forge something the Council cannot destroy. The Dulari Seer Kron approached, her multifaceted eyes shifting as she perceived potential timelines. I have glimpsed 1,000 possible futures from this moment, she announced, her translator struggling with concepts that existed outside linear time. In only one do we achieve not just survival, but justice. What makes that single future different? Asked Mesa, the Kalindri who had rescued Jackson. In that future, Kron replied, pointing directly at Elena and Lily, we stop hiding. The gathering erupted in argument. Centuries of conditioning had taught these species that visibility meant extinction. The debate raged for hours, with Elena listening more than speaking. These beings needed to reach their own conclusions. Finally, Senek raised his crystalline arms for silence. The human perspective intrigues us. Their technological adaptations of Council systems show innovation our species have forgotten in our struggle to survive. The Council believes us all extinct or nearly so, added the Urlith representative, his form shifting partially out of phase with reality, the natural ability that had allowed some of his kind to escape containment. They have grown complacent in that belief. What precisely do you propose? Saris demanded of Elena. She gestured to Lily, who activated a new projection. Schematics for an integrated defense network that combine technologies from multiple species. Phase 1. We share knowledge, Elena explained. The Vor crystalline interfaces, combined with Tracerian computational abilities and human adaptive programming. The Urlith phase-shifting technology enhanced by Myclith infiltration techniques. Each of our species developed unique countermeasures against Council technology. Together, they become something entirely new. Phase 2. Lily continued with the confidence of someone twice her age. We established secure communications between all survivor enclaves. The Dulari temporal sensing gives us advance warning of Council movements. And Phase 3? Asked Mesa. Elena's expression hardened. We take the fight to them. Not as 17 separate resistance movements, but as one united force, a covenant of the discarded. The term resonated through the cavern. Many of these beings had used discarded as a bitter self-description. The Lena had reforged it into something powerful. The Council's greatest weakness, she continued, is their belief in their own inevitability. They've ruled for 30,000 years. They believe they'll rule for 30,000 more. We will shatter that belief. One by one, the representatives moved toward the central platform where Elena and Lily stood. The Vor Crystal Elder placed his appendage against a human hand in the first formal alliance between their species. Others followed. Tentacles, appendages, energy fields merging in the ancient gesture of concordance. The Dulari Seer was the last to join. I see the timeline solidifying, she whispered. The Council's end approaches, not through destruction, but transformation. As the Alliance formed, humanity shared its innovations, adaptations of Council technology that could protect all their species. The Council had sought to extinguish humanity's light, but instead had ignited a flame that now spread across the stars. The Parliament of the Forgotten had assembled. The galaxy would never be the same. General Hiroshi Tanaka had never expected to command a multi-species assault force. Yet here he stood on the bridge of the Defiance, surrounded by beings that most humans had believed mythical until months ago. Status report, he ordered, his voice steady despite the gravity of their mission. "Diversionary forces in position," reported his tactical officer, a Tracerian whose compound mind could track hundreds of variables simultaneously. Council defensive grid focused on sectors 7 through 12, as predicted. "Infiltration team ready for deployment," added Calendry Commander Misa, her scales shifting to match the metallic tones of the ship's interior. "Vor interface specialists prepared to initiate systems override." Tanaka studied the massive structure on the view screen, the central communication nexus that connected all Council worlds. Buried beneath the surface of HFY, the facility was the most heavily defended information hub in known space. Any direct assault would be suicide, which was why they weren't mounting a direct assault. "Begin Phase 1, Tanaka ordered. Across 3 star systems, vessels of the newly formed alliance initiated simultaneous attacks on Council monitoring stations. The response was immediate, defensive fleets redirecting to counter the apparent major offensive. "Council command is diverting 47% of Action's defensive screen," the Tracerian reported with satisfaction. "Infiltration window opens in 3 minutes." Tanaka turned to the small insertion craft docked within the Defiance. The team that would change the course of the war. Calendry shapeshifters who could mimic Council species, Vor technicians who could interface directly with any information system, and human special forces operatives who provided the tactical expertise to bind these capabilities together. "Remember," he addressed them through the comm, "we're not there to destroy the hub. Our mission is to control it. 26 hours is our target. Make them count." The insertion craft detached silently, its experimental phase-shifting technology rendering it virtually undetectable as it descended toward Action on II. Tanaka watched it disappear from sensors, then returned his attention to coordinating the diversionary attacks. For 6 tense hours, the Alliance forces engaged in hit-and-run tactics, drawing Council resources away from the Nexus. Tanaka received nothing from the infiltration team. Radio silence was essential. Either they had succeeded in penetrating the facility, or they had already failed. Then, precisely on schedule, every communication screen across the bridge flickered. The Council's standard information display vanished, replaced by footage that made even the battle-hardened general pause. The massacre of New Eden, shown from multiple angles, Council ships methodically reducing cities to ash while civilians attempted to flee. "They've done it," whispered his human communications officer. Across Council space, every communication screen, neural interface, and public announcement system broadcast the unedited footage. The carefully cultivated narrative of benevolent oversight collapsed as billions of beings witnessed the truth. Council propaganda had always portrayed containment operations as humane responses to dangerous aggression. Now their citizens saw terrified colonists, children in school uniforms, medical personnel in their hospitals, all methodically eliminated. The broadcasts continued, moving backward through time, showing not just humanity's suffering, but the containment of 18 other species. Decades of carefully classified atrocities exposed in a relentless stream of evidence. Alliance vessels report unusual communications from Council military units, the Tracerian tactical officer announced. Multiple commanders requesting confirmation of orders. Some appear to be questioning their leadership. Tanaka had expected resistance from the Council, counterattacks against their information warfare. What he hadn't anticipated was the fracturing of the Council itself. Reports flooded in from across Alliance intelligence networks. In the Council chambers, representatives of junior member species demanded explanations for the atrocities they were witnessing. When the High Executor ordered military strikes against protesters on 5 Council worlds, the response shocked everyone. Admiral Kel Vorn of the Council's Third Fleet has publicly refused the order, reported Mesa, her scales rippling with excitement. He's announced that his forces will protect civilian populations from all threats, including those from within. 7 Council members formally seceded within days. The mighty Council, uncontested for 30,000 years, hadn't been defeated by superior firepower, but by its own documented atrocities. When the infiltration team finally returned, exhausted but triumphant, Tanaka greeted them personally. 26 hours, he acknowledged. You've accomplished more in that time than we could have with a decade of conventional warfare. Kalendri Commander Misa's scales shifted to a deep blue of satisfaction. The Council built their power on secrecy and selective truth. We simply removed the filters. Reports from Earth indicate the occupation forces are in disarray, added his intelligence officer. Some units are withdrawing entirely as their home governments secede from the Council. Tanaka allowed himself a rare smile. Alert all Alliance forces. Phase 2 begins immediately, securing the seceding worlds before Council hardliners can re-establish control. As orders went out to the assembled fleet, Tanaka received one final piece of intelligence that confirmed their victory was near. "Sir," reported his communications officer, "the High Executor's private security detail has eliminated him. He was preparing to order a final strike against Earth using prohibited temporal weapons." The Council's last desperate gambit had collapsed from within. The news spread through the Alliance fleet, not with raucous celebration, but with the quiet satisfaction of justice long delayed. "Set course for Earth," Tanaka ordered. "It's time to go home." The mighty Council, feared for 30 millennia, hadn't fallen to superior weapons or tactics. It had collapsed under the weight of its own exposed atrocities. The truth had accomplished what no armada could have achieved. Humanity's fury had ignited the flame, but it was truth that had brought down an empire. 5 years after the first attacks, the Singapore arcology rose from Earth's surface like a phoenix reborn. Once reduced to rubble in the Council's failed attempt to crush Earth's resistance, it now hosted representatives from 73 species for the Grand Conclave. Admiral Marcus Chen observed the proceedings from a balcony overlooking the main chamber. Below, delegates arranged themselves according to their environmental needs: aquatic species in specialized tanks, methane brothers in sealed chambers, energy beings in containment fields that allowed interaction without dissipation. The proceedings opened with a moment of silence for the billions lost across all victim species. Then the Remembrance Choir took center stage, children from every represented species performing a piece composed by Lily Wong, now 17, and a respected diplomat in her own right. As the haunting harmonies filled the chamber, Marcus reflected on the journey that had led to this moment. From the ashes of New Eden and Avalon, through desperate resistance and unlikely alliances, to this unprecedented gathering of species united by common purpose. Ambassador Elena Sharma approached the central podium, her diplomatic uniform bearing the insignia of the newly formed covenant. 5 years ago, she began, her words automatically translated for all attendees. Humanity faced extinction. We were not the first to experience the Council's containment protocols. Thanks to the courage of those who refused to be erased from history, we will be the last. Delegates from the former discarded species nodded in solemn agreement. Their centuries of hidden resistance had preserved the knowledge and technologies that had proven crucial in the Alliance's victory. Today we gather not to create another council, Elena continued, but to establish something fundamentally different. The Covenant of Sentient Rights recognizes that diversity is not a threat to be managed, but strength to be embraced. The document appeared on every delegate's communication device, translated perfectly into their native languages, a technical feat made possible by Tracerian computational linguistics and Vor interface technology. Marcus watched as Elena and representatives of the former discarded species signed first, a symbolic acknowledgement of their pivotal role. Then, one by one, representatives of 73 species added their endorsements, including former council members whose courage in seceding had hastened the regime's collapse. The Covenant wasn't just idealistic rhetoric. It created practical frameworks for mutual defense, technological exchange, and cultural preservation. Most revolutionary was the reparation protocol. Former council worlds would dedicate resources to restoring devastated planets and preserving the genetic and cultural heritage of nearly extinct species. As the formal proceedings concluded, Marcus felt a presence beside him. Lily Wong had grown from the traumatized child he'd rescued from Avalon's mines into a poised young woman whose experiences had shaped her into a natural bridge builder between species. Was it worth it? She asked quietly. All the fighting, all the sacrifices. Marcus considered the question carefully as he watched former enemies now working together, planning joint colonies and research initiatives. The Council wanted to eliminate humanity because they feared what we might become, he replied finally. They never understood that our greatest strength isn't our fury, though that gave us the will to fight. It's our capacity to forge connections, to turn enemies into allies, to imagine better futures, and then build them together. Below them, the new Covenant fleet officers prepared to depart on their first joint mission. Not conquest, but exploration. Humans served alongside Vor, Myclith, Tressarians, and a dozen other species once deemed too dangerous to exist. They tried to write an ending to our story, Marcus told Lily with a smile. Instead, they only finished their own. Across the chamber, Dr. Olivia Mdlovu conferred with Vor scientists about terraforming techniques to restore life to contained worlds. The bioweapons program she had developed as a last resort had been dismantled, its research repurposed for healing rather than harm. Jackson Wei, once humanity's spy, now served as the Covenant's chief archivist, documenting the true histories of all member species. The knowledge he had risked everything to preserve would ensure that the Council's atrocities would never be forgotten or repeated. Commander Sofia Rodriguez, architect of the Varix 9 operation, led the Covenant's new defense force. Her experimental tactics, combining technologies from multiple species, had evolved into formal doctrine. Under her leadership, the fleet existed not to conquer but to protect. In the chamber center, a memorial displayed the names of every world lost to containment. Beside it stood a tree grown from a seedling rescued from Avalon's ruins, a living monument to resilience. As the Grand Conclave concluded, the Singapore Arcology's massive windows opened to reveal Earth's sunset. For beings from worlds where the sky held only terror, this simple beauty represented something profound. A future where looking upward inspired hope rather than fear. General Tanaka joined Marcus and Lily on the balcony, his normally stern expression softened. "The Covenant Defense Fleet awaits your inspection, Admiral," he reported formally, then added more personally. "We did it, Marcus. We actually did it." Marcus nodded, thinking of the millions lost, the colonies reduced to ash, the children like Lily who had grown up too quickly amid war. The price had been unimaginably high. But as he watched representatives of 73 species depart not as enemies or uneasy allies, but as partners in a shared future, he knew their sacrifice had purchased something precious. "The Council thought they were ending our story," he said, echoing his words to Lily. "They never realized they were only beginning it." Below them, Alina Sharma concluded the ceremony with words that would echo across 1,000 worlds. "Today marks not victory, but transformation. Not an ending, but a beginning. The stars await not our fury, but our hope."